Welcome back to another episode of Light Beer, Dark Money. I'm Sean Noble. Chris is on a remote assignment, I guess. I don't know. Probably with his family. Happy New Year, everyone. It is 2025, if you can believe it. I can't. I feel like 2024 was probably one of the craziest years that we've gone through. And ended, obviously depends on your perspective, but lots of things to look forward to in 2025, getting 2024 behind us. But obviously 2025 starting with a challenge. These terrorist attacks in New Orleans and Las Vegas. There was an incident in D.C. this morning with a car driving up on the sidewalk near the Capitol. But going back to New Orleans, here you have a military and an army officer who gets divorced, radicalizes, converts to Muslim or Islam, and then becomes a follower of ISIS. This all happened in the last year or so. So this is a new convert to radical Islam, becomes an adherent of ISIS, and then goes out and kills at least 15 people, it could be more, injured 35 in a horrible, brutal attack, which is very similar to attacks that have happened in Europe by radical Islams, using vehicles to plow into people during celebrations. This happened in Germany a couple weeks ago. Maybe it wasn't even that long ago. And what I feared, obviously when this happened at first, there was a lot of chatter. Oh, this truck came across the border 2 days ago, blah, blah, blah. So everyone assumed an illegal immigrant. But this was a homegrown one. And this kind of leads to what faces the incoming Trump administration as we go right out of the box. We've had a very porous border for the last few years. We have no idea how many terrorist sympathizing people have come across the border. We don't know how many people have been radicalized that are here, that are American citizens. And one of the things that was baffling to me was that newspaper reporters got to this guy's house before the FBI. And it's like, how in the world is law enforcement not more engaged on this? The FBI in particular, I'm telling you, the FBI needs a serious shakeup from top to bottom. And they need to get focused on the things that matter, not whether parents at school board meetings are getting too angry, or if you are a Christian and you are pro-life, somehow you're a threat to people. These are all stories that you know about. But I think we're going to find out that this guy was on the FBI's, radar. I just have no doubt that that's going to happen. And this will become a law enforcement and intelligence failure to prevent this from happening. I don't know. It's going to be, this feels like an ominous beginning to 2025 because, as many people who supported Trump have a lot of hope about what he's going to do, about what Elon and Vivek are going to do with Doge and, drain the swamp and try to get things back on track. This is going to be a challenge because there are forces, evil forces across the world and the country that are going to do everything they can to prevent this from happening. I mean, the guy had 2 assassination attempts against him last year. And now coming into office, we just beginning the year, we've got 2 terrorist attacks at least. And one of the things that's interesting is that, so the one in Vegas, also an Army guy who was actually based at the same base as the guy from New Orleans. I don't know whether they knew each other. That's something that needs to be looked at. Interestingly, they both rented their trucks on an app called Turo. A little more than a coincidence, I think. I mean, I don't know how popular Turo is, but the fact that, it just seems a little bit odd. So there might be a connection there. That guy obviously was a little bit incompetent because he blew himself up. There was he put a bunch of extra big fireworks and gas and camping propane in the back of the cyber truck, and then for whatever reason detonated it while he was still in it. So maybe some kind of a suicide bomber, I guess. Thankfully, all the injuries of others that were around appear to be fairly minor, about 7 people. But what Trump faces, what the Trump administration faces, what law enforcement faces as we go into 2025, as we come into this new year, is a lot of angst. And so we're going to see more terrorism. I mean, there's just no question in my mind that this will be part of the way that radical Islam responds to what's happening in the Middle East, what's happening with Iran. And there's going to be an interesting debate within the Trump administration. You have really, big anti-Iran hawks with Marco Rubio at Secretary of State, Mike Waltz as the National Security Advisor. So you'll have some that are pushing for us to, finish off Iran, basically, because they're in a weakened position right now. And then you have others in the administration that are very much more let's not intervene on this stuff. So yet to be seen how that plays out. But if Europe is any indication, you kind of view Europe as the canary in a coal mine for what's coming to America, from the standpoint of you have the radicalization of immigrants coming in, trying to impose Sharia law in parts of England and Germany and France. You had these big uprisings. You had a lot of terrorist attacks. Most of them small in the sense of not hundreds of deaths, but dozens of deaths or a few deaths, stabbings, all that kind of stuff. And now we have, the vehicular attacks, and now we see that in New Orleans. And I think this is just the beginning. So this will be a tool by the radical Islam forces to try to keep Trump distracted on doing good things for America. They don't want to make America great again. So, and then on top of that, you'll have the leftist radical Islam sympathizers. So you're going to see protests like you did in New York yesterday. You're going to see protesters talking about, the intifada. And so we're going to see more protests across the country. These are going to be funded by the left. They're going to be, use the Middle East conflict as the hook, and they're going to continue to, try to make things hard for Trump in implementing his policies. And then, of course, you'll have Democrat attorneys general across the country who are going to be actively suing this Trump administration on basically anything they try to implement. So it's going to be a challenge. This is not going to be like, Trump's elected. We threw out the woke Biden Kamala Harris administration. We took the Senate back. We kept the House. Everything's great. Well, it's not going to be great. folks. It's going to be chaotic. And add on top of that, tomorrow we have the vote in Congress about the Speaker. And, Trump is supportive of Mike Johnson, but there's not a lot of people that are super happy. And some will probably, a prediction I'll make is that on the first pass of the Speaker, there will be a lot of people that don't even answer the roll call. And so they'll have to do a second pass. And they'll do that as a way, this is Republicans, as a way to send a message. So you'll have all the Democrats voting for Hakeem Jeffries, and you'll have all the Republicans will ultimately vote for Johnson, except maybe one. Thomas Massie has said he's not. And there might be others, but there can only be one more. The challenge is, and this is where Trump doesn't want it to be chaotic, is that this vote happens tomorrow, which is January 3rd, and there needs to be a speaker, an elected speaker, in order to certify the election on January 6th, which is next week. That's next Monday. So, I think what you'll see is a number of people who point out that they're not happy with Johnson, but they're gonna grit their teeth and vote for him out of loyalty to Trump and to keep things moving. But they're going to extract their price at some point in the near future. And there's a lot of legislative shenanigans that can happen. So you have the Senate, which is going to be, I think, relatively smooth because the Republicans are fairly unified on the Senate side. Now, what I actually think is going to be interesting is you're going to see a situation in which the Senate and President Trump are going to be more aligned than the House and Trump. And that's, there are more Trump people in the House than there are in the Senate, per capita and percentage-wise. And so that's going to be making an interesting dynamic. But you've got a number of people who would be considered MAGA who are very, very concerned about spending. And they're not going to just roll over on this stuff. So it will be interesting to watch, for sure. And on top of that, you have the policy, and we saw this shake out right around Christmas, where there was this big debate over the H-1B visas. Trump announced that he was going to bring one of the PayPal guys in to be the AI czar, and folks like Laura Loomer and others immediately attacked him for being big pro H-1B visa guys. And then Vivek and Musk threw down the gauntlet, and with Musk going as far as saying on Christmas Day, not being very jolly, saying you can go F yourself in the face. I will die on this hill of H-1Bs. He was an H-1B visa holder himself at one time. Remember, he was born in South Africa and came over in the tech space on an H-1B. And then you had the populists like Bannon who were like, this system is broken and needs to be abolished. And for now, Trump has sided with Elon, which is a little different than Trump has been on the H-1B visa issue in the past. Now, clearly, and then Vivek stoked it a little bit by saying the reason we have H-1Bs is because, tech companies can't hire native-born Americans because there's a cultural problem. Instead of sleepovers, they should be doing math homework, and instead of, cheerleading, they should be doing STEM competitions, and just the kind of thing that really misses the point. Because not everyone thinks that becoming a coder, an engineer, is the end all of careers. That's definitely not anything that appealed to me. and because he trashed jocks and I was not a jock by any sense. I was in a small, Sholo is a small town, it's a small school, so if you could walk without tripping, you played sports. But it doesn't make you a jock. My experience in high school was one in which I had my toes dipped into a lot of different places. I was in drama, I was in choir, I played sports. So I got to see a little bit. I was in academic decathlon because they needed the C student. And so I was able to have a high school experience that was, I would say, I had a pretty good vision of all of the cliques, so to speak. And Vivek, I don't know what his background is in the sense of, yes, he probably came from, kind of he was, all the Tiger moms who were like, yes, way to go, Vivek. But that doesn't work. I mean, we have to have people who are creative. We have to have people who think outside the box. We don't need all coders. I mean, it's just not the way our society is built. So that created a bunch of stir. So it'll be interesting to see the tension between the Silicon Valley tech bros and well, not all of them are Silicon Valley anymore. They're now Austin and other places. But basically the tech bros and the true populist MAGA types like Steve Bannon. So watch for those debates to happen, and that will be interesting because there is going to be, I will say, that, and this is one thing that I've said before, I think that Trump is going to surprise a lot of his populist MAGA base with the deals that he cuts to actually get things done. And, ultimately, he's going to probably side more likely with the billionaire tech class on these big policy issues than he is with Steve Bannon and the populist grassroots side. That's where my gut says things kind of shake out. So that's kind of the view of what we face in 2025 as a nation, as a world, and it seems a little scary. It seems a little chaotic. There's a lot to be worried about. So how do we focus on the good things, right? Well, one thing we could do is we can celebrate, those of us that are ASU grads and ASU fans, we can celebrate the amazing comeback story that the ASU football program demonstrated this year, and capped with just an amazing game against University of Texas, in which they took them to double overtime. Now, this is ASU was the spread on this was ASU losing by 13. That was what the bookmakers were saying, and they just did a phenomenal job of coming back from 24 to down 24-8 and tying it, going into overtime, having a tie again, go to a double overtime, and then heartbreakingly throw an interception right at the end to end the game. But what a phenomenal experience that this has been to watch. I can't imagine what it's like to have been part of the program, to be in that. But kudos to ASU football for really turning it around and becoming a premier football program in the nation. I mean, this will help with recruiting. There's just no question that they are going to be a top-notch team for the future, for the years to come. So usually New Year, people talk about resolutions, talk about, new year, new you. There is some research that says that if you make a list It's less likely to happen. You know, I do that every year. I make I make a series of New Year's resolutions. We've talked about those on the program before. And this year, I just decided I would do a little mental exercise, and I would limit it to three things, I guess topics. And this was nothing more than, you know, looking at one of those I don't know what they call them. It's like you're doing a word search. You know, you circle find blue, you know, and it can be written backwards or forward or diagonal or whatever. But it was one of those things. And I said to myself, I'm going to pick the 3 words that I see first. 3 phrases or words. And as it turned out, the 3 I saw, and this was the order: love, self-care, and purpose. Now, the self-care one is the one that's the least, I guess, least like me or least appealing, because I'm not the kind of guy that likes to book massages. I don't get my nails done. Don't do pedicures. Just all the thing. A spa day just doesn't really appeal, and obviously that there's a lot more to self-care than that. But that's what a lot of people think of, and so I'm going to have to give some thought as to what does self-care mean for me this year in 2025. It could be, and this is something because Alyssa was asking me, my wife was asking me, what are your thoughts on that? And I said, I really haven't thought about it. She's like, well, you have to have something. I said, well, I love listening to books on my Audible, especially good ones. And so I said, maybe it's just driving around for 30 minutes, uninterrupted by anything, just listening to my book each day. Because I tend to do it when I drive, or I sit in the sauna. Those are the times that I listen to my book, whatever it is I'm listening to at that time. And I read before I go to sleep on my Kindle. And then sometimes I'll have a hardcover or an actual physical book that I'll read during the day or on weekends. But those tend to take forever for me to finish because I don't have as much time. So maybe that's the thing I do, is set aside time to actually read my books. Love, that's just a big one. I know that one of the things that's a goal for me this year is to demonstrate love to my kids more overtly, and mainly be less angry with them. I tend to channel my dad sometimes, and those of you who knew my dad will understand that. And there are times I say something, it's like, wow, that Alan just came out. So I definitely will have that to work on. And then on the purpose, that was the one that really kind of jumped out at me, because I think that's important for us as human beings, is, what is our purpose? But it did get me thinking about the writing of Victor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning. And so I remembered a couple things because I read that book many years ago. I need to read. That's one of the books I'm going to read early this year. And we all know that the big message from Victor Frankl and Man's Search for Meaning was that you can't break the human spirit, that only if you allow it to be taken. And, for example, this quote: everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. I mean, this is a guy who was in a concentration camp. I mean, it is amazing, the wisdom that came from him. So the one that I wanted to read is this one. Ultimately, man should not ask what the meaning of his life is, but rather must recognize that it is he who is asked. In a word, each man is questioned by life, and he can only answer to life by answering for his own life. To life, he can only respond to being responsible. And I take that as to, rather than searching for our meaning, we live a life of meaning, and that we focus on trying to do things for other people. That will be what's actually satisfying and gratifying and give us a sense of true self. So as we go into this year, and all the craziness that we're going to watch unfold, and it will, there will be great things that happen, there will be terrible things that happen. But I would encourage you, our listeners and viewers, to stay focused on those things in which you can impact for the good. And think about the things that you can do each day to better the world around you, whether it's your relationship with your spouse or your partner, your friends, your kids, your coworkers. If you're focused on how do I help others succeed and others find meaning and others find purpose, then we will reach a greater purpose in our own lives by helping those that are around us. It's kind of my thought. So with that, have a great beginning of 2025. We'll be back next week with lots of stuff to talk about. And I'm telling you, folks, one, we can't thank you enough for what you've done to make a success of this program. Light Beer Dark Money started, as you know, almost 4 years ago as just, an idea that we'd get together and chat once a week. And, I figured I've said this before, I figured if we had 50 or 100 people that listened on any kind of regularity, that would be a miracle. It's gone beyond our wildest expectations. And we can't thank you enough for your loyalty, for listening, for participating in this crazy dialogue. And we hope to bring you a phenomenal amount of great programs throughout the year with great guests, great discussion, and a lot of things you may not agree with. And that's part of it. We can agree to disagree, but we can do it with a smile on our face and still be friends at the end. With that, thanks, everybody. Have a great, happy new year. See ya.